to see you.
And gentlemen.
It's very cool.
Yes.
In Hanover, it's very cool. It was 34 this morning.
Oh
I
my
had frost in my garden. I'm going to be complaining about that for weeks.
Yeah.
Well, it was your, what did you call it? Your basil?
My
Basil.
basil.
Basil. She's from London. You
I
can
knew
tell.
that. Yeah.
And
I knew that was
asked her if
British. Yeah.
At British, and I asked her if that was related to basil. I love how she talks.
Oh, good.
There's the
Good
rabbi.
morning, Rabbi.
Sam is back. Hi,
Boker
Sam.
Tov, Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.
Okay,
Good
so
Jontov.
Good Yom Tov. Good to see everybody.
Good Yom Tov.
I have my esteemed colleague here, Dr. Sam Richardson, who is a great scholar in Judaism and so forth. I think so, yeah,
Oh,
I would
thank
say
you.
so. And is always super helpful with anything that has to do with our wonderful text studies and so forth. So today we're going to be talking about the Shema, which hopefully most people know about it. So I'll start by a little introduction, and then we'll open up for questions. So where does the Shema come from? The Shema in its entirety actually consists of 3 paragraphs, and it shows up in Deuteronomy 6, 4, 9, Deuteronomy 11, 13 to 21, and Numbers 15, 37 to 41. We recite the Shema twice a day, morning and evening, as it is a biblical commandment. In addition, we recite the Shema just before going to bed, to sleep, and in the Kedusha service on Shabbat. Does anybody have any questions so far, and as to the Shema itself, or to the words of the Shema? You have to unmute yourselves if you want to ask a question. Everybody's muted, so you have to unmute yourself to ask a question. I can't hear anybody. Unless nobody has a question, really? No questions? So we all know everything. We might as well just go party.
Well, I will say this, that when I'm flying and I'm in a plane and it takes off and lands, I say a lot of Shemas.
Okay. It's good also to say it when you're really up in the air, because that's kind of closer to God, right?
Right. But I want that to be the last thing coming from my lips.
Very nice. Very good. Yes, of course. Yeah. It's also tradition to say it just before death. It's you say the Shema. That's a very good point. We all hope that all our flights are going to be safe, and we don't have to deal with that kind of issues. Is there something we do different sometimes right after the Shema that anybody wants to talk about that one and figure that one out? I was waiting for that question. I was hoping someone is going to ask me that question. So I guess.
Are you talking about the Baroque Shma after the Shema, which we only say on Yom Kippur? You mean?
That's right. And traditional Judaism teaches that we only say it on Yom Kippur. Mm-hmm. Liberal Judaism, especially Reform Judaism, they say it out loud every time at services, and every time I go shh at my service, because we're not supposed to say it now. So it's kind of interesting. Some people say it, and we have, kind of Sons of Israel is a mixed bag of a lot of different traditions. So I usually do my services conservative with some Reform touch. So rarely we would say we don't say it. If I do the traditional Shema, Shema, Yisrael, and so I don't say the Baruch Shem Olam Vayit. But if we sing the Shema like in the Reform way, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, then you just sing it. But it's kind of part of a song more than the prayer. because at that point I can just tolerate it because it's okay. It's just part of the singing. So does anybody know why we whisper it usually and only say it aloud on Yom Kippur? Any thoughts? Maybe someone wants to start thinking about it, or anybody knows the answer perhaps, or take a guess. I'd love to hear some guesses. I want to see what people are thinking. Why would we just say it on Yom Kippur out loud and not during the year?
I mean, it seems to me one guess is that Yom Kippur is different. This is one way to differentiate Yom Kippur from the other days. And on Yom Kippur, wasn't that the day when the high priest would get up and say the name of God, which was only uttered on Yom Kippur or something like that?
That's a good way to think about it. What else is special about Yom Kippur for us?
Well, we're
We are
fasting.
the ones saying it. What happens to us on Yom Kippur? There's a few teachings that we could read here, but let's see what I really want to hear it from the modern Jew's perspective, like what you may think it would be. Anybody else? Please unmute yourself to talk.
We don't get to eat.
We don't get. That's right. Who else doesn't eat?
Could it be
Aye.
that this is our last chance for redemption?
Okay, but there's nothing bad in like the words Baruch Shem Kvod Malchuto Olam Vaed. It's not like why would we not say it during the year?
Does it have anything to do with the translation, the meaning?
A lot has to do with the lost in translation in English, absolutely, but not in this case.
Okay.
Well, what is let's you know what, Ronnie, good point. Let's go to what does it translate to? So first the Shema. The Shema is Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. And here comes the clue of why about the second line. When we say, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one," what Israel are we referring to? Who are we talking to when we say Shema Yisrael? Who's this Israel?
All of the Jewish population.
That's a common thought. That's what most people think. But actually, the tradition teaches us something different. Anybody has a guess? When I first learned the Shema, it was the same thing. Yeah, hear Israel, listen people, Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, right? But our tradition teaches us something different. Who else, or I'll just give you the answer. Who else is referred to as Israel?
Jacob.
That's right. So part of the tradition is that Jacob was concerned about his children, whether they're going to all follow the rules. And that's one of the teaching of the rabbis. So they said, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." So his children confirmed that they will follow God's rules and just go with one God. And then Jacob quietly said, "Baruch Shem Kvod Malchuto Olam Vaed." Blessed is the name of his glorified, the glory of his kingdom forever and ever. This, the translation here is a little bit.
Okay, so the first line, Shema, is God talking, and the second one is Jacob talking?
No, the first line, the sons, the children of Jacob, the heads of the 12 tribes, right?
Well, and it's important to note that the context of this is where? Jacob's
Yes.
deathbed. So Jacob is dying, he has his sons surrounding him, and they're saying.
And he is concerned that they will not all follow
Right.
the Jewish tradition and believe in one God, and some of them may be idol worshippers. So to reaffirm, to confirm that they will continue with their religion, they said, "Hear, O Israel, hear, O Jacob," just they wouldn't say father, so they say Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And then Jacob, basically says, Baruch Shem Kvod Malchuto L'olam Va'ed. So that's one of the teachings. There's another teaching, but by
why does Jacob whisper it?
Why does he whisper it? Right. We're getting to the point of the Yom Kippur. So why? I'm getting good questions from this guy here. So this is why, I love having him in every discussion. Okay, come on, people. Why do we whisper it during the year and only say it aloud in Yom Kippur? Well, what happens to us on Yom Kippur? What do we hope happens to us on Yom Kippur?
We'll be inscribed in the Book of Life.
So we have done all of our prayers and pleadings, and we're hoping for God to give us the correct the plus sign instead of the minus sign. We're hoping to get a positive answer from that. So how do we the fact that we fast is one thing. That it was a good point you mentioned there before. We are getting to, we were white, we're becoming a little bit more.
Well, I think by fasting, that's focusing us more on God.
We are
Closer to God.
we're being elevated, right? So we hope to be closer to God, right? And who is closer to God? Who usually is, what's our tradition saying? Who's surrounding God?
The
The angels.
Angels. There we go. Take it from here. Explain about the angels.
Explain about the angels?
Yes, right here, Rabbi Sundel Ben Yosef of Bialystok.
Well, mortals are not fit to be to bless God, since we are not connected to godliness. And so so this, take it from Joseph first, from not Joseph, I apologize, because I was having a conversation about Joseph earlier.
Jacob.
From Jacob, he's near death. And so on the one hand, physically, he's whispering because he is near, he doesn't have the strength, but he wants to affirm what his sons have just said. And he wants to be able to express to his God at the same time that he is looking forward to coming into his presence and worshiping with the angels. So it's a both and on that. Then we move to the temple. And in temple times, as somebody mentioned correctly, Hashem's name was only pronounced on Yom Kippur. I mean, and one of the miracles is that it could be heard in Talmud. It says it's heard as far away as Damascus. Yet nobody is able to remember how to pronounce it after they hear it. And the new high priest has to be taught at the exchange how to say the name. But in the temple, it was only, the people would not say these words. So you go to the temple to bring your sacrifice or to worship or for Sukkot or whatever it is, you're not allowed to say these words. The Levites are responding, and they are mimicking the angels. And it's only in that context that humans are allowed to say it, insofar as we are mimicking the angels standing in God's presence. So then we come to our day. And so when we whisper, we're like Yosef, but in Yom Kippur, we're like the Levites.
Jacob. We're like Jacob.
I'm sorry, I did it again. We're like Jacob, yes. During the year, we're like Jacob. On Yom Kippur, we're like the Levites and the angels.
Yes.
Does that summarize it okay?
That summarizes perfectly well. Okay. You can see that he teaches college. Okay.
Let me ask a question. This may be a tangent, but you were talking about when a new high priest came in and had to be taught the pronunciation of the name of God. It just made me wonder, how did that turnover take place? I mean, was the old high priest still around when the new high priest had to be taught, or did somebody else know how to pronounce it that they could teach the new high priest after the old high priest died? I'm sorry, that's a tangent, but I just was wondering.
No, it's a really good question, and there's a lot in our tradition that talks about that. Most high priests ended their term of office by dying. And there is a big concern that the high priest would die just before Yom Kippur. And then what do you do with the brand new high priest? He has to be taught all this stuff. And so there were Kohanim who were specifically tasked with training the new Kohen Hagadol. And it was generally a many month process because there were things that only the Kohen Hagadol was supposed to do or could do or knew about. And so ideally you have the current training the new, but that often didn't happen. And so we really, there's a lot of gray area around that. And so but what happens on Yom Kippur, the Kohen Hagadol, only time of the year, he comes in to the Kodesh Kodeshim, the Holy of Holies, and he brings in the incense and he stands before God. And so there's an aspect of faith in everything we do. But in this, I would say there's also an aspect of faith that the Kohen Hagadol is learning directly from Hashem at that point in time. And so I think without going into the 3-hour lecture, there you go.
So there's a group of potential candidates that have been trained for when? No?
There's a group of candidates who, when one is selected, he will be trained.
Is it kind of like how they pick the Dalai Lama?
No.
Maybe the Pope.
more
I was
like
thinking the Pope as well. Yeah.
Right, more like the Pope. Right. Because the that's another 2-hour lecture. The Kohen Hagadol can only be selected from a certain family and met certain qualifications, and then who is agreed upon by the entire body of Kohanim to be the Kohen Hagadol. Actually, it's more like the Lubavitcher Rebbe, I think.
Yes, if it's not the son, he doesn't have a son, it's going to be the nephew.
But even now, they don't agree unless there's a consensus.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not like in North Korea that it's going to be by the family. So
Right.
it's going to be a little bit different. And by the way, it's not like the Pope. The Pope is like the Kohen Gadol. So
Thank
let's
you.
just
Thank you for that clarification.
let's
Yes.
just correct that one.
Absolutely.
So and remind everybody who came first.
May I ask a question? If there's no minyan, why do you say El Melech Ne'eman?
If there is no minyan, why do you say El Melech Ne'eman before
Before you say Shema? Yes.
that one? Go ahead.
Do you have an Art Scroll Siddur?
Yes.
Look, they have a great answer in the Art Scroll Siddur. And so I direct you. Basically, it has to do with the Kabbalistic understanding of being in the presence of God and how to take the non-minyan individual or group of people higher up into that presence.
And again, this is definitely by our. It's not ordered in the Torah, right? This is later on. So this is something that rabbis came up with later on to make sure that we have the minyan for prayer.
Thank you.
And that's why now with modern rabbis come up with other solutions to situations. For example, I would say when I have, if I don't have a minyan at my services, because we're a small congregation, sometimes we don't have a minyan, I have to make a decision what to do. For example, if there's someone in mourning and they want to say Kaddish, what do I do as a rabbi? Do I opt for letting him say Kaddish without a minyan or not? And that's also another topic. I'm just getting out of this the minyan thing. There's always debate between among the rabbis and all the rabbinic authorities about what's a minyan and what's considered a minyan. Some places, if they have 9, they take out 1 Sefer Torah and they make that a 10. I mean, there are all kinds of ways to figure it out. Now that we are all on Zoom, so we have a Zoom minyan. So it's just like so abstract at this point. It's a very challenging. We're going through very challenging times now due to this pandemic, and it's good that modern rabbis have the opportunity, and I would say that Orthodox rabbis have the same opportunity to make a decision based on local circumstances. That's what I do, at least, and so in that aspect, it's okay. It's good that we're not affiliated, and I don't have to follow the exact rules of the Rabbinic Assembly or the Conference of Rabbis, because I do what I need to do based on my community. I think it's a greater opportunity for a rabbi to lead their community this way, right? I would say so, but you know,
Well, and there's a whole history behind that too.
of course, there's a whole history. But just to clarify something really interesting about rabbis and rabbinic schools and traditions and so forth, which have nothing to do with the Shema right now. To become an Orthodox rabbi, do you know what? Does anybody know what it takes to become an Orthodox rabbi? No? Anybody want to guess? What does it take to become an Orthodox rabbi? What do you have to do? Do you know what it takes to become a
Jew?
Go ahead, sorry.
You have to be an Orthodox Jew.
You have to be Orthodox, yes.
Obviously, you have to study for many years.
You have to study, it's a good one. That part of the sentence is correct.
You have to study through the Orthodox rabbinical training.
How do you do that?
Go to a school that's run by Orthodox teachers and rabbis.
You're dancing around it.
You have to go through a Beit Din.
Well, you have to be ordained, right? Definitely. But who ordains you?
Other Orthodox rabbis, right?
Almost.
Is there a Beit Din?
Yes. No, it's you can become an Orthodox rabbi. Before I tell you that, what do you need to do to be a conservative rabbi, to be affiliated with the conservative movement? How do you become a conservative rabbi? Anybody knows? Unmute yourselves and let me know.
Graduate from Jewish Theological Seminary and you are ordained, right?
JTS, is it a 5 years course? It's 5 years? I think it's 5 years.
That was 4 years.
4 years, 4 years, 5 years. But can you just go there directly from high school?
No, it's a graduate program.
No, it's a graduate program. Okay, so you do a college first, and then you go to rabbinic school. Then you become a conservative rabbi. So it takes you about like
But you
somewhere
don't have
between.
to become ordained after you graduate
Right,
from JTS.
you don't have to become ordained, right? You could just, you're not ordained. But for Reform rabbis, it's pretty similar. You have to do a college degree, then you go to a Reform school. So to be an Orthodox rabbi, would you think that like, what's the knowledge level of our religion when it comes to rabbis? Orthodox, conservative, or Reform? Which one would be the most knowledgeable, you would think? You would think.
Orthodox.
Orthodox? Does everybody agree with that, Orthodox or?
No.
Depends, right?
Not necessarily.
It depends on knowledge of what. Not all people are knowledgeable in the same things.
Ooh. Ooh, Elaine's good. She's good.
So, when it comes to Orthodox, okay? If you're an Orthodox person, you probably know pretty much a lot about the Torah and the Nevi'im and Ketuvim. You probably studied that. You know it. You're aware of it. You practice Orthodox Judaism on a daily basis. You have to study for 1 year side by side with an Orthodox rabbi. And that rabbi can ordain you to be an Orthodox rabbi, basically.
Wow.
1 year.
So it's more like a mentorship.
1 year. One.
Yeah.
And as Elaine said, it can be in a specialty area. So it could be, you could be ordained and your specialty, what you know about is kashrut.
Yep.
Or what you know about is Chevrat Kadisha. Or what you know about is counseling in the modern day. There's a number of different areas that you can, or Erevin.
Or a posek.
Yes,
You could become a posek. You know what a posek is? A posek is one who makes or interprets Allah halacha and makes basically a judgment or a decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
A decision on specific question. A posek. That's their specialty.
Are you saying you don't have to? Are you saying you don't have to go to college to be an Orthodox rabbi?
Correct.
That's correct.
So you can graduate from high school and have 1 year under an Orthodox rabbi and become a rabbi.
Well, or graduate from yeshiva. high school equivalent, whatever that is.
Yeah, okay.
Do you have to graduate from any school at all?
No.
Nope.
Interesting.
Yeah, interesting, isn't that? Yeah.
Well, the brief history, the Reform movement is less than 200 years old, and it came to be during the period of the growth of the Western University in Western Europe. And so insofar as the Reform movement was a desire to bring particularly German Jews into the modern age, the choice was to model Jewish education and ordination and communal life basically around Lutheranism. And since they had seminaries and they had a process, this is what the Reform movement decided to do. And then we can see that even more clearly as we come to the United States, and Hebrew Union College was founded, and the model continued in that way, so that today both conservative and Reform look much more like the larger world than still does Orthodoxy. Modern Orthodoxy is kind of in the middle, whereas you would think it's more on the right. No, modern Orthodoxy is actually middle Judaism today.
Fascinating, isn't it?
Rachel had a number of interesting looks on her face, wondering what she's thinking.
I think she'll have to tell us in person. Her phone sometimes. Try to unmute, Rachel. Let's see if you have good reception today.
I don't think I have very good reception now.
Okay.
So
it was fascinating, though.
Good to know.
Right. The issue also comes to what is Torah.
Yes.
And what is it that needs to be taught? And therefore, what is it that that teachers need to know? And it gets also to what is the nature of authority.
Yes.
Because in the shtetl, or in medieval Jewish life, the rabbi was often an adjudicator, and a decisor, so someone who decided questions of law, which then could be enforced and would be enforced by the community.
Right.
But today, in the Jewish community, you don't have that authority, so you have to use, it's about influence. It's a different type of authority.
Rabbi Chopra, you're absolutely right. Absolutely. This is a good point. Thank you. And I want to say also that in the Reform, and I'm not familiar with the Reconstructionist school, but in the Reform and conservative schools, they teach them a lot more than just what you would learn with an Orthodox rabbi. They teach them more about, I think even all the way to synagogue administration and how to deal with people and psychology and sociology and everything else that comes along with the territory of being a rabbi nowadays in a community, with a lot of more broad issues than, as Rabbi Chopra said, were in the shtetl back then. So that's it's not like the.
But even if you know about administration,
yes,
in most Reform synagogues and conservative, you're going to have an administrator,
right,
who's a professional who does that,
right.
And you then are expected, even as the rabbi, to defer to that professional,
right.
And that's why you're board.
Right.
You have people who specialize in certain areas. And even if you think your answer is better, you have to defer to the board if you want to keep your salary, right?
Yes.
Which wasn't true in the shtetl.
Hopefully you're lucky as I am, and I got like one of the best presidents of synagogues I could ever have, Ronnie, Mrs. Cook. She's right here, Ronnie. So we have a great relationship. Thank you, Ronnie, for that. I really appreciate it. I think I really lucked out with that. So
we don't always see eye to eye, but we work with it.
Absolutely. I only say the positive, Ronnie. So definitely.
Is it fair?
Mostly positive, so yes. And I mean, it's not eye to eye. It's always positive. It's just sometimes we have a little difference of opinions, like maybe they want the service to be an hour and a half, and now only 3 hours, but we'll agree on 2.25 and it will be fine.
Is it fair to say that a pulpit rabbi in the Orthodoxy would have more training beyond just be getting his rabbinate ordination from a fellow rabbi in that if he just went there and became familiar with laws as opposed to all the other things related to Judaism.
When we're talking about modern Orthodoxy, yes.
Or in the past, in the shtetl, for instance.
It depends. It depends on the what's the word I'm looking for? The level of respect that a community has. A community that is very well known, very well respected within larger Judaism is going to have among the best educated rabbinical staff. A smaller community with a few dozen families is going to get who they can get that has at least gone to some yeshiva or studied with a rabbi who is known. In older times, medieval times to the early modern era, you wanted at least to have a rabbi who either was married to somebody whose father was well known, or who was taught by somebody who was well known, or at least their third uncle's fourth wife's father was well known.
Was well known, not just a rabbi, but well known.
Right. It was more about who you know necessarily than what you know. Because of course,
Is there
working and we're talking about influence and all these things. It's a different world. Well, that's the difference.
Is there an age requirement for Orthodox rabbis?
Age.
Age?
I don't think so.
I don't recall.
The youngest Orthodox ordained Orthodox rabbi, was redundant, that I have met was 19.
Yeah, I think it's 18.
Wow.
It would be 18. I think it's 18. 18, but also 18 is ben 18 l'chuppah. You're supposed to get married and have kids. I mean, that's 18. That's basically our also the traditional teaching.
So my knowledge of the Stizzle is based on the TV show Stizzle, and that's in an Orthodox, very, very Orthodox section in Israel. If you're familiar with that TV show from Israel, and there is very close knit, and they have the high rabbi. Everybody goes to him for every kind of advice and legal advice, and he like rules the roost, and then all the other ones are trained under him. Is that accurate?
There is, yes. It's more like with the Hasidic communities that they have their, they have the rabbi, like pretty much like the Lubavitch. What about just about respect? I mean, we mentioned something about respect. Rabbi last name is how they would call the rabbis in the Orthodox community. Liberal Judaism permits some of the members to all of a sudden call the rabbi by their first name, and dropping the even rabbi, whatever. So Rabbi Carl, and all of a sudden someone would call you, hey Carl, so whoa, come on, Rabbi Chopra. I mean, that's be respectful. There's more respect to the rabbi in the Orthodox community, I would say, than in modern Judaism for sure. And when it comes to how people feel, it's a very American thing to call people by their first name. In every company that I work with, every corporation, people.
I learned a long time ago that different people needed to call me different things. So, as part of being a rabbi, I see it as my role to be a catalyst for different things to happen in different people. So part of that is what they call me and when they call me that.
Interesting.
And this would be a more modern approach of modern rabbis, because it's not going to happen in the Orthodox community.
Or maybe also a modern, well, every form of spiritual leadership responds to its context. It's still guided by what rabbis, or maybe what rebbes were trying to do. I don't call myself a rebbe. That's not what I'm saying, but I can take some inspiration from one or two of them.
Well, I mean, I've been called Rabbi here in Richmond because people just thought this was my first name, but that's different. That's a different kind of Rabbi. I said, okay, forget it. So, like Reverend, Yeah, you should.
Mhm.
It's almost you're contemplating when you move to a place like Richmond or others, places where not a lot of Jews live, and you're just thinking maybe I should just go by Reverend and they'll understand. It's not doing that, but just to explain to people what it's all about. It's it's Jewish. You know what I'm talking about. Anyway,
I have a question about the Shema.
Okay.
The Shema.
Okay, go for it.
So we've discussed Jacob and his sons. We've discussed temple times, and we've discussed congregational recitation. What about the individual? When I'm reciting the Shema in the morning, and when I'm reciting the Shema at night, who am I talking to, and why am I saying it?
Go for it. Who wants to answer that? No clue, or everybody's muted and you're all talking at the same time and I can't hear who's saying anything?
Well, I'll just say, like, for me personally, when I say the Shema, if there's nobody around, it's for me to say the Shema and the words to go up into the heavens. Because the way I view God, I don't think of God as a person or a being or, to me, Judaism is the tradition, is the saying of Hebrew, is going up into the heavens, is making me a better person. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Very good. Very good. Anybody else? I mean, there's got to be another 2 or 3 answers around here.
You're reading a contract between yourself and God.
Interesting.
Good. Very good.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? Can you put another couple sentences there?
Yeah, a couple more.
Well,
and then I have something.
There's a, you should do that. And if you do that, then I will do this. So, there's a tit for tat. That's an agreement.
Gotcha.
Very good. Very good. And who else?
But it seems to me that it's really you're telling yourself, emphasizing it to yourself so you can internalize it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
I agree. I think it's very personal.
So when it comes to personal, okay, so like a one person, okay, what do we when we say the Shema, does anybody notice anything in the Siddur sometime? Some Siddurim have it. When you read the Shema Yisrael Adonai Elonu Adonai Echad, do you see anything different in any of the letters?
The ayin is bold.
And the ayin
and the dalet.
Dalet, very good. So what does ayin? Thank you for showing it. I appreciate it. So what is ayin and dalet? What does that stand for? What's that two letters put together? What word is that in Hebrew?
Ad.
Ed.
Ed.
Ad and ed, that's right. Yeah. Ed is different than ad, but it could be ad. But in this specific case, it's ed. And anybody venture to guess or knows what ed is?
Witness, isn't it?
It is. Witness, it is. I'll give them the whole spiel.
Sure, go ahead.
No, go for it, please. Tell them about the ed. Why is it ed? What are we doing? Good talk. You're good at lecturing. Go for it.
No, I'm really not sure exactly where you're going, so please.
So ed, what are we doing? We are an ed. What do we do? We are witnessing what?
The existence, the continuation of God and the world, right?
Go ahead, tell the whole story.
It's very ethereal. It's very mystical. That we are here to continue as witnesses, not unlike the angels. We are here on earth, there in Shemaim, and we need to continue that process as we are lights to the nations, as we are reminding ourselves of who we are so that we can be the people of God. And you can only do that as a people who are expressing that. In the Psalms, we have a number of statements where the psalmist will get very frustrated with the people and say, okay, creation is going to witness if you are not going to witness, right?
Yes.
And so this is our opportunity to say, no, we don't have to stand back and allow the trees and the mountains and the thunder to be a witness. We will do our job and we will speak these truths. Is that where you're going?
Yes.
Okay.
So the first word, Shema, ends with an ayin. Israel, Adonai, Eloheinu, Adonai, Echad. And the last word, Echad, ends with the Dalet. From beginning to end. And we put it together. So, and I was going to ask Rabbi Chopper to add something. So please go ahead.
Okay, two things. One, building on what you just said, it never occurred to me until this moment that what we're talking about is education.
Ooh.
Very good. Good one. That's one.
And the second thing is that saying the Shema, it seems not only individual, as in we're very personal, we're addressing ourselves, but we're calling ourselves Israel. It's Shema Yisrael, listen up, Israel. So to the extent that I identify with Israel, it's very communal. It's addressed to all of us, and I'm part of it. So it's a statement of identity also, and belonging and connection.
Right. In a positive, and it just occurred to me, thank you, Rabbi, that as we move into our morning blessings, that we have made a change in modern liberal Judaism to make a positive identity statement. We don't say, blessed are you, Lord God, King of the universe, for not having made me a Gentile. We say, blessed are you, Lord God, King of the universe, for having made me part of Israel.
Right.
And so it's a positive, and as a sociologist, I can tell you, positive identity affirmation is much stronger, more enduring than negative affirmation.
So now, of course, we're going to have the Orthodox argue with us because, or within ourselves, and it's of course, in the Siddur, in the Art Scroll, it says, Shelo asani goy.
Yeah.
That has not made me a Gentile. And then we say that has made me Israel. And that's how things have been transforming and changing over the years from the rabbi in the shtetl to the modern rabbi of the 2000s years. I really don't want to say 2020. It's not been the best year here. So, but you all know what I'm talking about.
Those are also the three categories of being commanded in rabbinic literature. In rabbinic literature, to be free, to be male, Jewish, and free. Not to be, so what those three together are saying is, thank you for giving me mitzvot.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Of course, you know, with the more we evolve in our perspective of prayers, we added, you know, to the Amidah, Avot ve'imahot, and we had the mothers and so forth. So it's changing and interesting. In some conservative Siddurim, we still have the option to say Mechaya Metim or Mechaya Hakol, and that's pretty. It became an individual thing for when you pray, whether you're going to say Mechaya Metim or Mechaya Hakol. And on most Reform synagogues, it's just the option of Metim has been dropped off there. But some Reform Siddurim still have that option to choose between Mechaya Metim and Mechaya Hakol. So there's a lot of changes happened, but if you go back, the Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad still is Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Whichever synagogue you walk into, it's still gonna be the same. It's just, as Rabbi Chopper said, it's at this point, a lot of people look at it as Israel, like Israel in general, all of the people Israel, and the original was Israel Jacob that we talked about. Thank you, Rabbi Chopper, for all your input here. I really appreciate this. I'm speaking on both our behalf here, and I'm sure everybody else appreciates that insight as well. Anybody has any more questions about the Shema? Of course, you're going to go to your own services and do whatever you're going to do with the Baroque Shma Kvod Malchut Olam Va'ed. I know that, but at least you know a little bit. We touched on the where it came from and what it's all about, and we didn't even go through the V'ahavta.
No, we didn't. That's okay.
Which is another thing I want to say. It says very clearly, V'shinantam levanecha. And most of the stuff has been written in the masculine, right?
Mm-hmm.
In Hebrew.
Yes.
And when they said levanecha, it's, if you literally translate it, is your sons, but it's actually we now consider it children. Teach them diligently to your children. We had this question about Congregation Sons of Israel come up last year or the year before. It was last year, I think, and we were celebrating 100th anniversary in Chambersburg. And the question is, why is it called Sons of Israel? Well, because they translated Bnei Israel to Sons of Israel at that point in time, 100 and something years ago. And that's the name they chose to go with. And they could have just as well gone with the Children of Israel. But they opted for the Sons of Israel, and no need to take offense in that if you're thinking about the women are definitely included. It's because the children of Israel are children, male and female. It just
how do the Orthodox community view this?
How do the Orthodox view? What's the question exactly?
How does for instance, the Hasidic community view those words?
How do they?
Are they inclusive of male and female, or just male?
Into the Haftarah. Right. He's asking what.
I have it in Hebrew, so I don't have it in English in my.
Well, no. So I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think what you're asking is, when an Orthodox Jew recites those words, is he thinking children or is he thinking sons?
So how do they teach them?
The question was for you.
I would say that it's children, because what happens if you only have daughters? If you go back to the daughters of Tzlofchad already in the Bible, we love our daughters very much. I love my sons and my daughters, and I have no issue with this. And I would say that they view it as children nowadays. In modern Orthodox, definitely would view this. And I would say also the Orthodox, not in general. I think
just like any group, the Orthodox are not monolithic. However, I think that there has always been a strain, if we are to take Torah seriously, and we take the daughters of Zelophehad seriously, as well as other things that, I mean, we have in Judges, and we have then moving in, there was even in the early part of the 2nd century, after we were defeated by Rome, there was actually a small movement that ordained women as rabbis. So we've had this come up. So if we take seriously some of the things that happen in tradition, and as a dad of girls, and there's been rabbis of girls for millennia, I think that most people are going to think children. So did that answer your question?
It does, but it's not official until,
Until it comes from the art scroll. What does it say? What is in the art scroll? We have the art scroll here, right?
Yeah. There's the whole Beis Yaakov movement of the schools, the House of Jacob movement, that's built on a midrash. And when Torah was given to Sinai, it was given to Bnei Yisrael and Beit Yaakov, to the children of Israel and the House of Jacob. And the midrash says the children of Israel, that's the sons of Israel, that's the men, and the house of Jacob, that's the women.
Includes the daughters. Well, I would think that in the Ashkenazi community, and I've seen all the Orthodox run with all their children and said, come on, kinderlach. So kinderlach is yeladim. Yeladim is plural for children. Yeah. We don't say banim.